Welcome back, everyone. I hope things are going well for you. On my end, this is a nice little kit. It's the Airfix 172nd FW 190. It was just a quick one. I got sidetracked traveling last month. I was in Southeast Asia for a couple of weeks. This one sat on the bench half finished and I finally got it done. So here you go. Anyone that's done an Airfix kit, even not modelers, are going to be familiar with these. You're not going to get super detailed, but they're cheap, they're fun, and you really can't complain. Like I say, the instructions there, they still look a bit 1979. Decals, they are what they are. There's two missing there, which does annoy me, but I won't get into the politics of that. The moulding's nice enough, no dramas. Again, I think you got to keep in mind that at least in Australian money, you're not paying $50, $60 for these kits. They're about $20. But they are fun and they're nice enough. And as you can see, you still get a nice looking result if you take your time. I think from my point of view, the German planes I'm definitely not so familiar with. But from airbrushing and that side of it point of view, they're very good because of the challenges in just doing the paintwork or the schemes on them. For some reason, the German planes can be a bit more challenging that way. And like I say, on a $20 kit, it's always much better to do your practice on these. I've got a Royale Edward set there with a whole bunch of FWs, so I would rather have a bit of a play with this one than going to town and making mistakes on some of the better quality things. So my point is really, so long as you keep in mind what you're getting and what you're paying here, I think these level 1 Airfix kits, they're about $20 in Australia. So you're not going to get the $60 quality. The colours, I didn't get too hung up on it. I know some of the, what would you say, German plane aficionados might get a little bit more fussy. From my point of view, it was just a plane to build, so I didn't get too caught up on the RLMs. If it looked near enough, I was happy with it. For some reason, this Airfix pilot isn't as crappy as some of them, but again, I think it's easy to forget that I'm a lot older than 12-year-old, but these are the sort of kits I did do when I was a kid, and you got to keep that in mind. So that's why the pilots and the figures, they're not necessarily the best, but if you're 10 or 12 doing these, you'll be very happy. With a bit of care, you can get them looking quite nice. The fit on the plane, yeah, it was all pretty good. We've jumped ahead a bit here because my filming was a bit dodgy over last month. There was a couple bits that I filled in around the engine cowling. I did come across with, I think it's Mr. Surfacer 1500, especially where I've used some filling. I do like to smooth it out. Then I'm just coming back across here like with the base grey. I can't remember whatever the RLM was that you saw before. So that gave me that base to work with. For masking, I just use literally masking tape for bulk work. I do use my Tamiya tapes and specialist tapes when required, but that's an expensive way to do it when you're not really getting that much benefit on larger areas. I do think the lacquers, as I've said before, make this sort of paintwork easier because it dries almost instantly, really, if you're doing it well. I don't know the technical name for this pattern, and I know someone will probably tell me in the comments what it is supposed to be called. I did break off the pitot tube here, and that was completely my own fault. It's one of the reasons I don't like putting fine details on, or in this case where they're molded into the wings and so on, straight up, because it is easy to break them as you work through. I'm just very lightly using a mixture. To be honest, it was a mix of the grey and green to come back and do some of the mottling. I haven't put the propeller section in at this point, and I was just really copying the box art at this point. As I say, German planes, I'm definitely not in the expert category. The masking, no problems at all. Nice thing about something like an FW is there's no crazy hours and hours of masking. It's for example, I love doing bombers, but sometimes I'm just not in the mood for a lot of masking. And if anything, that's canopy masking. If anything, that's the one thing I still don't like about doing planes. I was thinking maybe doing a truck or a lorry or something. I've got some there just as a bit of a break from doing planes. But in this case, it all comes together nice. The one thing that, again, I'm going to say, when you're doing the tape on canopies, the biggest lesson or improvement I found for myself was to use a really sharp blade. Just makes it much cleaner and you'll get better results. And then I come back, like you can see, and fill in all the middle bits. So no great dramas at this point. It's all gone together very nicely. I'm actually happy with it. I think when you're doing that modeling, it's too easy to do too much and go overboard, so I deliberately try and be a bit lighter. It's almost like that problem of knowing when to stop when you're doing that type of work. I'm just cleaning up the canopy at this point. There's a little bit of odds and ends here and there. I use a toothpick because then I'm not going to damage any of the clear plastic. But it all goes together nice. I do use, I think it's 1mm on these ones. I'll just do the borders and so on. As I say, you're going to have to forgive me a bit on this one because I'm sort of stopping every now and again to have a bit of a cough. But I do want to get this one out. The other thing I'd say about where I'm at, just as a sort of prelude, is I do have a bunch of planes sitting there. Well, not just planes, actually. I've got a few things sitting there. So I hope to get back into a bit more normal routine after the last couple months. Essentially, like I said, those of you that do follow the channel know I had that operation in September, and then basically I took a bit of a break, went overseas for a bit, had some fun, got away from work and everything for a couple of weeks. But going forward, there's a bunch of stuff that will be coming and hitting the workbench. Actually, I've got an F-16 I picked up in Bangkok, so as strange as that sounds, you go all the way around the world, and I still went and had a look at the model shops. And there was a nice Tamiya shop in Bangkok, so almost as a souvenir, I bought myself a Tamiya F-16. So that is definitely up next. Decals, they're just standard Airfix decals. I didn't really get too into it, so there's nothing hugely surprising here. I think the thing that I have learnt is to be careful with some of the decals and to slide it off the backing. It's a bit of a judgment call, but if you do try and pick some of them up with the tweezers, especially finer things, they can fold back on themselves, especially if they're not the best decals. Not saying these aren't, but they were a bit fiddly and they didn't seem to bond as strong. You can use microsole, microset. I did come back on that, and essentially my thing with the decals is I'll get the decals, maybe leave them to set a bit, and then I'll come back with either softening or microsole and so on, just to bed it down. So we're really coming to the end of this build. It's a nice little plane. Is it the greatest FW out there? No, but again, for the price point, yeah, it's fine. I got no issues with it. Doing that typical spiral. If I was doing, what would you say, a higher end kit, I'd probably mask it out and paint it. I don't think that's an argument that if you mask and paint, you'll always get a better result. And it's always a bit fiddly doing this with the decal. It's, I think, just perseverance, patience. And there's me using toothpicks again. I don't generally glue everything in until I'm happy with it, but there you go. Nice little FW190. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you again.